Hi. Before we get to Lefebvre's history of the city, I want to add one more fundamental understanding that I think it will help us address the urban transformation that he is suggesting for us. And that is the notion that the spatial and the social are interconnected, but still distinct, right? We tend quite often to think of space as something separate from society, but really they are interwoven, and for some people, space is just as social as society itself. Because social relations are bound up in our spatial practices and our design of space, which is a spatial practice, of course. So in order, and in turn, our spaces affect the way that we interact with each other, right? So, for instance, an example that should be quite familiar to all of us is as you can see in this picture here. This is a classroom, one of the newly remodeled ones at Korea University, in which all of the seats are fixed into these long benches, and they all face forward to the platform stage at the far end of the room, right? And I'm sure many of your lecture rooms and lecture halls are designed in a similar way. The desks don't move, they all face forward to where the professor is standing, sharing his or her knowledge with you. And when we have this kind of spatial arrangement, all the students facing the professor at the other end, we have a built-in set of power relations even between the professor and the students, right? This is not a setting like this in this picture is not one in which the audience, the participants, the students are considered to be equal to the professor at the far end on the stage, right? The professor stands up elevated above the students, looking down or at least across into the room. The students are only seeing the professor at the ends and the backs of people's heads, rather than being able to face each other and interact in a more horizontal way. So this kind of arrangement represents a very hierarchical set of power relations, right? If you have any professors that now or in the past or in the future who try to move the seats around, perhaps make a circle so everybody is facing each other, it creates a different set of social relations and power relations between the students themselves and between the students and the professor, right? The professor may still be the authority in charge, etc., but in a circle kind of setting, the students have much more chance to engage each other and to interact with each other and to share ideas and to build ideas. It creates a different kind of social relation, right? And just to push it even further to where we are, right? Our personal relationships are very different this semester because of COVID-19, in which the entire class is going to be online. I'm here alone in my office. You're alone or at least isolated wherever you are. And so our interactions have a different character, a different feeling, and we can communicate some things perhaps better, but many things I feel much worse. And now, even to push it even one step further, you're now watching this on a video which is pre-recorded. So we even have this a space and time gap here, right? So my space now is going to be different when you're actually watching this. So so again, our relation is different because I can't even hope to have some sort of input from you right now. And so this is a long-winded example of trying to show you how space and society are interlinked. And this same notion applies to our urban fabric outside. You can imagine that there are some communities with gates or blockades that you're not allowed to go in. That is a spatial manifestation of social relations. Either you're not rich enough to own property inside a gated community and therefore be allowed in, or perhaps you're not powerful enough in the government or in society to pass some sort of police barrier to access a political building or office or something like this, right? Even buildings that have passes to stop some people from getting in, an office building, and keep some out, is a way of embodying our social relations. Some people belong to that company and some people don't. So it manifests itself more broadly. It can also, but at the same time, I would suggest, and certainly LEFEBVRE would suggest, that our spatial world can't be completely reduced to social relations. That is, it's not just society that shapes space and makes space serve social needs, right? Those in power can't completely shape space to suit their needs. It turns out that space itself can struggle against those who wish to change that space, right? And the only example that comes to mind at the moment is that perhaps there's a low-income neighborhood next to a wealthy neighborhood, and those who are wealthy would like to get rid of that low-income neighborhood. But the fact is that those structures are there, those people are there, and the spatial arrangement is such that it resists being gotten rid of. Alternatively, sometimes in our cities and in a city like Seoul, we have all of these hills that divide neighborhoods from other neighborhoods, right? We can't easily just bulldoze down a hill and replace it with a new neighborhood, right? So space itself can also resist social relations. So while they are tightly connected, they're not identical, right? So they can conflict at the same time. So with that in mind, I think we're now ready to talk about LEFEBVRE's history of cities.